Hello, good afternoon. I'm Andri, and once again, I am warmly welcoming you all to my Essential Philosophy lecture. Today, we are starting with new series of publications and lectures regarding how philosophy spoke Arabic. So today, we are starting with simple lectures, and these will be a kind of an intro. So we shall start with most significant and most vital representatives within this category, how philosophy spoke Arabic. So we are starting with Al-Kindi, who was the first outstanding Islamic philosopher. He is known as the philosopher of the Arabs. Although Al-Kindi lived during the triumph of the Mutazillah of Baghdad and was connected with the Abbasid caliphs who championed the Mutazillah and patronized the Hellenistic sciences, there is no clear evidence that he belonged to a theological school. His writings show him to have been a diligent student of Greek and Hellenistic authors in philosophy and point to his familiarity with Indian arithmetic. His conscience, open and unshamed acknowledgement of earlier contributions to scientific inquiry was foreign to the spirit, method, and purpose of the theologians of that time. His acquaintance with the writings of great Plato and Aristotle was still incomplete and we might say technically inadequate. He improved really the Arabic translation of the theology of Aristotle, but made only an elective and circumspect use of it. Devoting most of his writings to questions of what we call natural philosophy and mathematics, Al-Kindi was particularly concerned with the relation between corporeal things which are changeable, in constant flux, infinite and as such unknowable, on the other hand, and a permanent world of forms, spiritual or secondary substances, which are not subject to flux, yet to which man has no access except through things of the senses. He insisted thus that purely human knowledge of all things is possible through the use of various scientific devices, methods, learning such things as mathematics and organon of thinking, that is logic, and assimilating the contributions of earlier thinkers. The existence of a supernatural way to his knowledge, in which all these requirements can be dispensed with, was acknowledged by Al-Kindi. God may choose to impart it to his prophets by cleansing and illuminating their souls, and by giving them his aid, right and proper guidance, and also, what is the most important, inspiration, and they in turn communicate it to ordinary man in an admirably clear, concise, and comprehensible style. This is the prophet's divine knowledge, characterized by special mode of access and style of exposition. In principle, however, this very same knowledge is accessible to men without divine aid or support, even though human knowledge may lack the completeness and consummate logic of the prophet's divine message. Reflection on the two different kinds of knowledge that we differentiate, the human knowledge bequeathed by the ancients and the revealed knowledge expressed in the Quran, led Al-Kindi to pose a number of issues, problems, themes, and apories that became central to Islamic philosophy. The rational, metaphorical exegesis of the Quran and the Hadith, the identification of God with the first being and the first cause, creation as the giving of being and as a kind of causation distinct from natural causation and Neoplatonic theory of emanation and graduation, and the immortality of the individual soul. So now we are going further we are traveling to Turkestan and we are meeting Al-Farabi, who was a Muslim philosopher and one of the preeminent thinkers of medieval Islam. He was regarded in the Arab world as the greatest philosophical authority after Aristotle, and very little, unfortunate, is known of Al-Farabi's life. He was of Turkic origin and is thought to have been brought to Baghdad as a child by his father, who was probably in the Turkish bodyguard of the Caliph. This is titular leader of the Islamic community. Al-Farabi was not a member of the court society, and neither did he work in the administration of the central government as many of these philosophers and scientists and scholars worked. In 942, he took up residence at the court of the Prince of ad-Dawla, where he remained mostly in Halab, modern Aleppo, until the time of his death. Political philosophy, in particular, and the study of religion, Al-Farabi regarded theology and the juridical study of the law as derivative phenomena that function within a kind of a framework set by the Prophet as lawgiver and founder of a human community. In this community, shown and presented by Farabi, revelation defines the opinions the members of the community must hold and the actions they have to perform if they are to attain the earthly happiness of this world and the supreme happiness of the world beyond. When it comes to philosophy, philosophy could not understand this framework of religion as long as it concerned itself almost exclusively with its truth content and confined the study of practical science to individualistic ethics and personal salvation. So in contrast to Al-Kindi and Al-Razi, Al-Farabi recast philosophy in a new framework analogous to that of the Islamic religion. The sciences were organized within this philosophic framework so that organon of thinking, logic, physics, mathematics, and metaphysics culminated in political science altogether, whose subject matter is the investigation of happiness and how it can be realized in cities and in nations. So, taking all this into our consideration, can you see that the central theme of this political science or sciencing is the founder of a virtuous or ideal or excellent community? Included in this theme are views concerning the supreme rulers who follow the founder, their qualifications, and how the community must be ordered so that its members attain a stage and state of happiness as citizens rather than isolated human beings. Once this new philosophical framework was established, it became possible to conduct a philosophical investigation of all the elements that constituted the Islamic community: the prophet, lawgiver, the aims of the divine laws, the legislation of beliefs, the actions, the role of the successors to the founding legislator, the grounds of the interpretation or reforms of the law, the classification of human communities according to their doctrines in addition to their size, and the critique of ignorant, transgressing, falsifying, and erring communities. Now, where we stand. Philosophical cosmology, on the other hand, alongside politics, psychology, and this remarkable political theory were blended by Al-Farabi into a kind of unique political theology whose aim was to clarify the very foundations of the Islamic community and consequently defend its reform in a direction that would promote scientific inquiry and also to encourage philosophers to play an active role in practical affairs. So, the analogy of religion and philosophy altogether, Al-Farabi's theological and political writings really showed later Muslim philosophers a kind of a way to deal with the question of the relation between philosophy and religion, which is very important to highlight, and presented them with a complex set of problems and questions that continued to elaborate, modify, and being developed in different directions and in different way of perspective and in different schools. Starting with the view that religion is analogous or similar to philosophy, Al-Farabi in this trace argued that the idea of the true prophet lawgiver ought to be the same as that of the true philosopher king. And this is nothing which can be differentiated from Platonic view on political structured entity. Thus, he challenged both Al-Kindi's view that prophets and philosophers have different and independent ways to the highest truth available to men, and we have Al-Razi view that philosophy is the only way to that knowledge. So we have three quite different views on how to put together philosophy and religion, so that a man could combine the 89 functions of prophecy, law giving, philosophy, kingship, did not necessarily mean that these functions were identical, but it did mean that they are all legitimate subjects of what we call philosophical inquiry. So philosophy must account for the powers, knowledge, and activities of the prophet, lawgiver, and king, which it must distinguish from and relate to those of the philosopher. The public or political, which is the same, a function of philosophy, was emphasized, unlike Neoplatonism, which had for long, I say for long, limited itself to the Platonic teaching that the function of philosophy is actually to liberate the soul from the shadowy existence of the cave in which knowledge can only be imperfectly and fragmentarily comprehended as shadows reflecting the light of the truth beyond the cave, that is the world of senses. Al-Farabi insisted with Plato that the philosopher must be forced to return to this cave, learn to talk to its inhabitants in a manner they can comprehend, and also in a manner they can engage in actions that may improve their lot. Now, we have the third great philosopher from Bukhara, from ancient Persia, Avicenna, who was an Islamic philosopher and a great scientist. His versatility, his imagination, his inventiveness, and prudence shaped philosophy into a one-of-a-kind ability, into a powerful force that gradually penetrated Islamic theology and my cherished Islamic spiritualism, mysticism, and Persian poetry in Eastern Islam, and gave them universality and also quite a unique theoretical depth. His own personal philosophic views, he said, were those of the ancient sages of Greece, including the genuine views of Plato and Aristotle, which he had set forth in the Oriental philosophy, a book that has not survived and probably was not written or meant to be written, but they were not identical to the common peripatetic or Aristotelian doctrines and were to be distinguished from the learning of his contemporaries, the Christian Aristotelians or Syrians of Baghdad, which he attacked vulgarly, distorted, and falsified. So, his most voluminous writing, Kitab al-Shifa, or the Book of Healing, was meant to accommodate the doctrines of other philosophers as well as hint at his own personal views, which are elaborated elsewhere in more imaginative and allegorical forms. The doctrine of creation Avicenna had learned from certain hints in Al-Farabi that the exoteric teachings of Plato regarding forms, creation, and the immortality of individual souls were closer to revealed doctrines than the genuine views of Aristotle, that the doctrines of Plotinus and later Neoplatonic commentators were really useful in harmonizing Aristotle's views with revealed doctrines, and that philosophy must accommodate itself to the divine law on the issue of creation and of reward and punishment in the hereafter, which presupposes some form of individual immortality. Following Al-Farabi's lead, our Avicenna initiated a full-fledged inquiry into the question of being, in which he distinguished between essence and existence. So he argued that the fact of existence cannot be inferred from or accounted for by the essence of existing things, and that form and matter by themselves cannot interact and originate the movement of the universe or the progressive actualization of existing things. So existence must, therefore, be due to an agent cause that necessitates, imparts, gives, or adds existence to an essence. So, to do so, the causa or the cause must be an existing thing and coexist with its effect. The universe consists of a chain of actual beings, each giving existence to the one below it, and responsible for the existence of the rest of the chain below. Because an actual infinite is deemed impossible by Avicenna, this chain as a whole must terminate in a being that is wholly simple and one, whose essence is its very existence and therefore is self-sufficient and not in need of something else to give it existence. Because its existence is not contingent on or necessitated by something else, but is necessary and eternal in itself, it satisfies the condition of being the necessitating cause of the entire chain that constitutes the eternal world of contingent existing things.